Okay, I'm going to need you to write a 40, 50, 60, 70,000, 100,000, 200,000 word novel. And as if that's not hard enough, I need you to describe the entire thing in 120 words. How to write a blurb. Episode 90 of Horrible Writing. That will never work. You can't push that. Seriously? Don't. Oh my God, that's another thing. That's bad. You probably should find other hobbies. You ever learn how to spell? Stop. Be happy. You don't bother. I've seen better people. Do you really want to? And my third grade. Get up. Welcome to Horrible Writing, the rawest, most candid, in-your-face writing show on the interwebs because none of us have time to suck. Let's do this. Hey, listeners, how you doing? Paul Sading, your host. A miracle that this episode even happened. One, it's behind schedule, way behind schedule. And two, technology did not want it to see the light of day. It didn't want it to be realized, but it is. So I hope this finds you well. I've recently returned from vacation and I calculated out how many episodes I would need to do. That way I could be covered through the entire vacation. Release weekly, not let anybody down. And guess what? I miscalculated, was short by a week. So this episode should have been out right at the beginning of June, and it wasn't. So I've got some work ahead of me to get caught back up. I apologize, but I hope and I think it'll be helpful because everything is timely. This episode and the next episode, I'm going to be talking about blurbs, the back of the book stuff, the stuff when you go to Amazon and you want to check out somebody's book and you read that little description. Yeah, those things. Here's the deal. They're not fun. And I have found over the past month that nobody thinks they're fun. Anybody who's taken the time to write one for their book has not enjoyed it. This is not my first time around. I'm currently writing the blurb for Rip, the new book that's going to come out this summer. And I'll tell you what, I've had 1,000 versions. None of them I liked. Everything I wanted to burn. I just wanted to just destroy the world by the time I was done with this. It's not a simple process. And, honestly, it's not fun, but it's a necessary evil. And it's something to work on, right? It's a skill to acquire and improve on, which is why I wanted to do a couple episodes on it. Keep it bite-sized, not overwhelm anybody, but actually start working on it. So a blurb, that description on Amazon, that's the converter, meaning that is the thing that gets people to buy. Now, you might be saying, Paul, no, it's the book cover, and I'm here to tell you it's not. The book cover is the thing that gets someone's attention. It catches their eye. That's why they're so important to get done professionally, to get done correctly in specific expectations of that genre's audience, right? Everything needs to comply with the expectations of whatever genre you're writing for, and it needs to be done professionally. Don't be slapping up some cheesy font on there because you think it's neat. There are people out there that do this for a living who are reasonably priced. They understand the indie author market, right? And they go do this thing. So all those things being assumed done correctly, you've just got somebody's attention. Now you got them looking at your book and reading about what it is. And that's where it comes down to the description. You have to nail the description. You have to do it right, aesthetically and in content-wise, and conceptually, I guess, as well. So there's a couple incredible components to a blurb. What does it have to contain? Well, obviously, you have to catch our attention right off the bat. You get 2 or 3 seconds of somebody's attention, and if you can't do it right in those 2 seconds, they're gone and might most likely never come back. So, aesthetically, do you want a big, long block paragraph of text? No, you do not want that. You don't want people having to dive and separate the weeds to see what your book is about. You need to hit them right in the face with a couple bullets, kind of copywriting at its best. You've got to get single sentence bullets, 1 or 2, maybe 3, depending on how it reads, something to catch someone's attention. It has to be snazzy, that byline, that movie tagline that you hear. That's what we're conditioned to. That's what you need to feed your audience. The purpose of those 1, 2, 3 bullets right at the beginning, standing apart, probably bigger font. If you go look at Amazon, you'll see these things, is to get somebody's attention for your book. You're an indie. If you're listening to this show, you're an indie. You don't have this wealth of publicity in your favor. If you go look at a prominent author, I don't know, think of your genre, think of a traditional publisher or traditional author who's a big name, and more than likely you're going to see praise at the top of theirs, right? Because they can get away with that because they've got the New York Times saying that their book is XYZ. For us, we don't have that. And I'm sorry, but your mom telling you that your romance is the most emotionally moving thing she's ever read, as your header in your description in your blurb, is not going to work. We love your mom. She's awesome. But we don't care what she thinks about your book. She's biased. You need to do that work, and you do it through those headlines. 1, 2, 3 bullets. What is your attention-getting step? Then you move into the actual blurb itself. And the blurb has to contain a couple things. Right away, you have to introduce us to the character. The character. The character. Who is the protagonist? Who is the person who this story centers around, who touches everybody in the story? Hit us up front with who they are. You've got a sentence to establish who they are. Then you've got 2 or 3 other sentences to kind of explain, to flesh that out. But that needs to be done very quickly. Then you need to give us the stakes, right? Introduce that conflict in that description. What is that opposing force pushing against that character who you introduced us to? We need to understand that. And when you are able to do that, then we understand what the stakes are. And you kind of want to wrap it up with that. That's how you want to finish it. That last line, standalone line, needs to be, will Paul get the podcast out on time or not? It has to leave a lingering question so that we understand what's at stake. If Paul doesn't do this thing, his podcast doesn't get out on time, right? Pretty cheesy book stake. You get the point, as a real life, real time example. And you leave us with that. We are now compelled. You got our attention. That's, again, remember, that's all those 1, 2, or 3 very short. I'm talking 2, 3, 4-word sentences are about. That's it. And then move us on to who the character is, the main character, and the opposing force / conflict. And that will lead us into what is at stake. Some people will fight and you'll see it too. Now, you can get away with adding another character, and you've got to be I'm very careful saying it, but you've got to be very careful doing that. There's a lot of important people in stories. There are, but we don't have time in that blurb to know who they are. They're not the central character, the central opposing A and B forces around that conflict. That's all we need to know. I've read blurbs from other writers where they introduce, that secondary character. It's a main character. They're in a lot of the book, and they're so important to that main character's journey. Yes, they are. But again, I don't care. You just need to give me enough that I'm interested in what's going on with that character. I have to be bought in. I have to be interested in the story. I have to be interested in their struggle. And the only way to do that is to very quickly ground me in who they are, what they're facing, / what the conflict is, and then what's at stake. And you've got to do that very quickly. When I was writing the blurb for Rip, my wife was at a dance competition. So I had a lot of time sitting around on my laptop just reading book blurbs because I don't feel that Rip is a horror. It's not a horror at all. It's more like a suspense thriller. And those of you who listened to the second season of Subject Found, you already know what the story is, though I still encourage you to get the book when it comes out because I've added a lot to it and it's really cool. But outside of that, it's a thriller suspense. I do horror, grimdark type stuff, and then more fantasy. So I wanted to brush up on that. So I spent, that week all day on the laptop studying blurbs that were out there. And let me tell you, folks, there is no science to it. There is no standard. And if you aren't paying attention to the prominence of an author, you're going to confuse yourself on what you can get away with and what your allowances are. Because there are some people, again, who can get much sloppier in blurbs than people like us. We have a very thin margin of error. We don't have name recognition. We don't have a publishing house behind us. We have to be able to get your attention, get it quickly, and compel you to read a couple short paragraphs to see if we can get you through to that at stake statement so that you will convert. It's not easy to do. For example, when I was talking about the bullet lines, I'm just going to share the working stuff for Rip. I may change it before this goes live, but I've got one that is plot-driven, one that is character-driven, and I've been testing it with my audience. So I'm going to read them straight through, let you compare it while you're listening, but you can see what I'm going for. These may change before it goes final. First blurb, focused on Janice, the main character. So here's the headlines, or what the headlines would be, the big font that you would see on Amazon. Fired, desperate, haunted by her past. One reporter with a story to tell. Janice Herring is a pariah in Memphis's media circles after being fired from her television job. Now, she will do anything to get back in the game. When the leading newspaper offers her a chance at redemption, she grabs it and is now the leading writer on the hottest story the city has ever seen. Soon she has to fight on all fronts. Peers are moving in to steal the story. The police are unwilling to cooperate, and now a strange man is stalking her. A guarded pattern emerges in the string of murders that has Janice questioning her friends, family, and even herself. The story of Memphis's murders was going to reestablish her as a preeminent reporter in the city, but with pressure mounting and everything falling apart, will she finish the story when she is faced with the truth? And then the second one is centered more on the plot. Women are being murdered. A serial killer on the loose. One reporter with a story to tell. Janice Herring is a pariah in Memphis's media circle since filing a complaint over sexual harassment by her former employer. Fired soon after, she found herself unemployable and shamed, and will do anything to get back in the game. When the leading newspaper offers her a chance at redemption, she grabs it and finds herself as the lead writer on the hottest story the city has ever seen. But she soon finds herself fighting on all fronts. Peers are moving in to steal the story. The police appear to be unwilling to cooperate with her, and now a strange man is stalking her. A pattern is developing in the string of murders that has Janice questioning everything. The story of the Memphis murders was going to reestablish her as a preeminent reporter in the city, but with pressure mounting, will her boss give her the chance, and will the killer give her the time? So, differences being subtle, it still sets expectations for your listeners, right? So again, get their attention, get it quickly. Introduce us to the main character, their opposing force / conflict, and then what's at stake. Hook us at the end. You can include the whole call to action of buy now to find out or get your copy, right? You can do those things. But before you do that, before that call to action, that stakes has to get us. That has to be the buy-in. We have to know. You have to create that desire, that motivation within someone else to pick up your book because they cannot not know. They have to know what happens to that character. These are not easy. Again, I've been working on this thing for a month and I still feel like I have work to do with it. And I will probably work on it not only until RIP is published, but even afterward. The test is interesting, and I'm going to talk about that in a future episode. I'll leave it to you at that. Those are the things that you're set out to do. 120 words, 150 words, maybe 200 if you can get away with it, but don't fool yourself into thinking that you can. Try to shoot shorter and see what you come up with. In the meantime, while you're thinking about that and while you're practicing, head over to wherever you got this show and leave a rating and review for the show. Please, 5 stars are, of course, appreciated, but I want you to be honest. If it helps you, I need it to help other writers. So please make sure that you do that for me. If you want exclusive content, become a patron. $1 a month gets you all kinds of stuff. This show, the stories we tell, Crown of Thieves, a medieval fantasy. Basically audience-driven drama that's starting to blend genres based on the audience and what they want. And of course, exclusive stories from time to time. All kinds of content over there. Lastly, join us on the Horrible Writing Writer Support Group. There's a ton of us over there. If you're a cool, supportive writer who wants to help other people and help yourself, raising tides lift all boats kind of mentality, come join us over there. Until episode 91, keep being epic. This has been Horrible Writing, and hopefully after this episode, you suck less than you did at the beginning. I am Paul Sading, your host extraordinaire. You can find me over on the Twitterverse at Writing Horrible and over at paulsading.com/horrible-writing. Until next time, suck less.